Okay, today I'm going to talk about 8 myths around emergency preparedness. I think historically, the term prepper has been given sort of a negative connotation. I think that it's been associated with doomsday preppers and people living in bunkers and stockpiling things and just pretty much all around being crazy people. What I'd like to do in this video is I made a list of 8 myths that I think can be demystified. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on those and see where that takes us. All right, let's talk about myth number 1. If my friends and family find out that I'm a prepper, they're going to think I'm crazy. Well, that might be true, but I like to believe after the COVID pandemic, you know, the idea around emergency preparedness, or the ideas around emergency preparedness, have come full circle, and I feel like a little bit of that attitude towards people has gone away. I think it originates from, you know, like reality shows like Doomsday Preppers and conspiracy theorists, you know, thinking that, you know, the world's going to end via zombie apocalypse, and that's just simply not the case at all. I think what we need to do when it comes to friends and family is, if we even choose to speak with them about preparedness, maybe use current events or discussions around what's going on in the world to sort of interject your thoughts and ideas with them. Plant a few seeds in the discussion just to sort of help people make the decision on their own and come to the realization that maybe they aren't as prepared as they need to be. If you can manage to reach that point, I think then you can also take it to another level where you can make recommendations for ways that your friends and family and community can better prepare themselves without necessarily giving away all the things that you do on your own as a prepper. All right, myth number 2, prepping is expensive. Prepping is, you know, it's expensive if you're talking about stockpiling things like firearms, or if you're looking to buy a zombie attack vehicle or something crazy like that. I mean, there's certainly things you can do to make prepping expensive. But in my experience, especially with new preppers, it's actually really easy to, you know, build a stockpile of supplies and be prepared for emergencies, and you can do that on the cheap. Buying bulk food is a great way to get started on that. There's a lot of other things you can buy that I won't list them all here, but simple things like candles, extra medications and things like that, that you can sort of stockpile or have on hand in case of an emergency, that really doesn't cost you a whole lot. Later on the channel, I'm going to cover some of this in more detail. One of the things I'd really like to do is talk about micro prepping. So if you're a person who lives in a small apartment, let's say, or you don't have a lot of room to store supplies, I'm going to go into detail about how you can take a small space and really set yourself up for success in case there's an emergency. So I'll be doing that video here pretty soon on the channel. All right, let's talk about number 3. Preppers are gun-toting crazy Republicans. Okay, this is not true. I'm not a Republican, and I'm a gun owner, and I'm a prepper. And I've been a prepper for over 20 years. And I think where this comes from is that, especially here in the US, the way our political system works, it really works really hard in a two-party system that they try to divide us in huge ways. The Republicans versus the Democrats, it's probably better if we're at odds all the time, and I simply don't think that it has to be that way. I think when it comes to preparedness and emergency preparedness, we basically share a lot more. We have more common goals and ideas than we actually realize, and I think that can come through regardless of like what your political stance is. All right, let's talk about myth number 4. So myth number 4 is that you need 72 hours of supplies to get you through an emergency. I cringe all the time when I hear the government talk about this, and it's not just the US government. What I really would encourage people to do is sit down and ask themselves, is 3 days worth of food and clean water and supplies really going to get me through a long-term grid down situation or something like that? Because it's not. I got news for you. So I think the reason that governments make this recommendation is so that they can simply say that they have a policy in place, that they've done something good for the public. And I also think that if they were to actually give you the recommendation that they want to give you or that you actually need to be fully prepared for a disaster, it would just cause panic and mayhem, because really a 72-hour preparedness plan is not sufficient to get you through. So in this channel, I'm also going to work toward making recommendations about long-term food storage and things that you can do that will be much more sufficient for you to get through any type of emergency. Okay, myth number 5. If shit hits the fan, I need to go solo. This is not true. And a lot of people, from what I've read online and what I've seen, I think a lot of people believe that they can hole up in their apartment or their house and lock all the doors and windows and everything with their, year's supply of food and water, and everything is going to be fine. What you really have to ask yourself is, if we're in a long-term survival situation, what happens if you get a toothache? What happens if you get an infection? Are you a dentist? No. Are you a doctor? No. I'm assuming most people aren't. You need people in a community that can help each other out. The other thing to think about is security. So, there's going to be a lot of desperate people roving around in a real grid down or emergency situation or a natural disaster. You really don't want a roving gang of armed degenerates coming through your neighborhood, banging on doors. Because, if you think that you can protect your supplies and yourself and your family against desperate armed people or gangs of thugs, you're wrong. That's not, that's just a recipe for disaster. So that's why I think that having a fully functioning community of people with various skills is going to be far more successful than you thinking that you can go it alone in an emergency, because that's just not going to work. Okay, let's talk about number 6, myth number 6, the zombie apocalypse. So I think the zombie apocalypse thing was made famous by shows like The Walking Dead and whatnot, and it was sort of had a lot of entertainment value, but slowly got associated with the end of the world and crazy preppers. And that's unfortunate, because I think that obviously that's not the case. And I think the thing to think about is, when people get really desperate, whether you're a drug addict needing a fix or people who are starving because they ran out of supplies, people kind of act like zombies. I've seen it. And so I think the point I want to make there is, call people zombies in an emergency situation if you want. It's perfectly okay. Obviously, they're not zombies, but people in a real emergency situation can get very desperate and do very desperate things to protect themselves and their families. So that's something to keep in mind. And just so you know, the zombies aren't coming. I hope that doesn't burst your bubble too much. All right, let's talk about myth number 7, EMPs. I don't know where this phenomenon came from. I've seen this in the last few years, people going out and spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on Faraday cages and Faraday bags and hoping to protect their cell phones so they could play Candy Crush or some shit. You guys, you're misguided there. EMPs are a real thing. In theory, could a rogue nation explode a nuclear missile over a city and cause an EMP that'll wipe out your computer and your car and your radios and all that stuff? Yeah, absolutely. Here in the US, is that likely to happen? Probably not. I suppose there are some coastal cities that could potentially have a problem like that. But I guess the point I want to make here is, EMPs are a real thing. Solar storms from the sun are a very real thing that can affect communications and electronics. But especially if you're a beginner prepper, I think what you need to do is get more focused on spending your dollars in a smarter way in terms of everyday preparedness items, lighting, food storage, weather radios, like all those different things that it's a better use of your time and your money, especially if you're just starting out. So EMPs are possible. How likely are they? Not very. All right, myth number 8, the government is going to save my ass in case of an emergency. Okay, this is not true. You can look through history, like Hurricane Katrina, for example. People died at the Superdome waiting around for FEMA to show up to give them some clean water and take care of them. If you're waiting on the government to save you, you're doomed. That's just a fact. I talked earlier about the 72-hour preparedness recommendation from FEMA. They had a real similar recommendation recently in France. France sent out notifications to all their citizens with essentially the same ideas. That's not sufficient, like I talked about earlier. I think what we need to understand here is there needs to be a real focus on self-reliance. In the preparedness community, you're going to hear that term used often, self-reliance. Take ownership of your preparedness. That's what I'm trying to do with this channel, is to provide my knowledge over the last 20 plus years of survival preparedness. But self-reliance is a huge factor, and just don't assume that what the government is telling you they're going to do is true. If things get real desperate, is the National Guard going to come down your alley handing out MREs and stuff? Yeah, probably, but that ain't no way to live, I'm telling you right now. And it probably won't be sufficient either. So when it comes to relying on the government, I encourage you to own your preparedness and rely as little as possible on the government or anyone else to help you out. All right, that's the video for today. 8 myths about emergency preparedness as I see it, and preppers in general. Whether you agree or disagree, I don't care. Well, I do care, but leave comments under the video, because I'm just curious to see if you thought the video was beneficial, or if you have comments about what I said today. I'm going to leave it there, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos about micro prepping, security, food storage, power. Like, I got all the things. And until I get another video out to you guys, everybody stay safe out there.